Hello, and welcome to Solar Alberta's 2026 Solar Series. Today's session is called Solar 101, Solar for Your Home or Business. Please note that we have enabled closed captioning for this presentation. You can turn on the captioning in the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. My name is Stephanie Westland, and I am the Education Lead at Solar Alberta. I would like to take a minute to acknowledge that I am hosting you today and working day to day from the place traditionally called Moginstis, also known as Calgary, Alberta. Calgary is located on the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta. This includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, made up of the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, the Iiaskastoni Nakota Nations, made up of the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney bands, and the Tsuut'ina First Nation. Calgary is also homeland to the historic Northwest Métis and to Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. To start, we'd like to thank Solar Club for sponsoring today's session. We're happy and grateful to have them as a sponsor. Today, we'll be hearing from Heather McKenzie, the Executive Director of Solar Alberta. Following her presentation, there will be a question and answer period in which you can all participate. The entire session will wrap up in about an hour and a half. We are recording this session and will make the recording available on our website and our YouTube channel. For those who are registered, you will all receive an email with the video link once we have uploaded it. We will be using Zoom Q&A for questions rather than the chat box, so please enter all your questions in the Q&A section throughout the presentation. Also, please click on the little thumbs up symbols to upvote questions that you like. Before we move forward, we are going to do a quick poll to get a sense of who we have joining us. Please take a minute to answer the questions that are popping up on your screen now. And while some of you are doing that poll, I also encourage you to take a minute and pop your name, land acknowledgement, and any contact information you are comfortable sharing into the chat now and throughout the event so that others can look you up on LinkedIn or email you. It's just a great way to form some new relationships. Great. So it's sort of as we expect, most people are solar curious, a few more solar knowledgeable, and we also have some solar industry professionals in the room. So that's super helpful. It's always just good to know who we have in our audience before we dive in. So now a little bit more about Solar Alberta. So Solar Alberta is now in its 35th year of operation. We are a not-for-profit society dedicated to accelerating Alberta's transition to a just and sustainable energy future. We do so by advocating, educating, and serving as an industry and community hub for solar energy. Our membership is made up of 175 individuals and 115 businesses. We also have more than 36,000 followers. We provide a number of services, including managing a solar directory through our website. In this way, we act as a bridge for installers, suppliers, and other solar-related businesses to connect with their customers and clients. Our directory gets approximately 20,000 hits each year, and you can see a link to it in the chat. Throughout the year, we run the Solar Series webinars like this one you are attending today. On September 24th, we are hosting a webinar called Intro to Electric Vehicles in Alberta, which will cover the fundamentals of owning an EV and dive into the particulars of how EVs work with solar in Alberta. Registration is free and can be completed through the link in the chat. And you can find free archived videos of all of our previous Solar Series webinars on our YouTube channel. We also offer classes for those in the solar industry and those transitioning into it. Most of our courses are online on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. First up is Navigating Alberta's Electricity Grid, which starts on October 6th. We are once again offering our solar training course bundle, which includes all 4 of our technical courses for the price of 3. The link to purchase the bundle and all the courses individually is being placed in the chat now. On-demand recordings of our courses are also available for sale alongside affordable industry-oriented webinars in the solar training videos section of our website. In addition to providing education about solar, we also advocate for it. We are currently rising up for renewables. We have lawn signs available for pickup in 10 municipalities, and we offer free delivery in 8 municipalities around Alberta. We have recently updated the template letters for you to use on our website, asking the Government of Alberta to eliminate the discriminatory rules and regulations they have established for renewable energy. You can click on the link in the chat to make a free sign order or to find our template letters today. And even if you have sent a letter in the past using our templates, please consider doing so again with the new template. Until the end of this week, we are accepting donations to Solar Alberta's 2026 Summer Online Auction, which will run from August 4th to September 15th. For more information about the benefits of donating, please reach out to the email being added to the chat now. And keep an eye out for the auction's launch the first week of August. If you're not already a Solar Alberta member, I encourage you to join. Individual memberships are only $35 and can be purchased at the link in the chat. If you are looking to support the work that we are doing in other ways, please consider volunteering, donating, or sponsoring a future webinar. Lastly, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Solar Club for sponsoring today's webinar. We couldn't offer all of this amazing free content without the support of our sponsors. We're always interested in developing more partnerships for our events, so if you or your organization want to work with us to educate the public about solar or solar-related technologies, please don't hesitate to reach out. And now I'd like to turn the mic over to Darren Chu from Solar Club to share a little bit more about Solar Club and introduce our speaker for the day. I look forward to chatting with you all in the Q&A.
Thanks, Stephanie. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Hi, my name's Darren. I am the Managing Director for the Solar Club. We are the original solar rate provider in Alberta, representing over a third of all the microgen sites in the province, and also the largest solar provider in Alberta for utilities. We collectively operate something called the Hummingbird Virtual Solar Community. And the Hummingbird Virtual Solar Community represents about 300 megawatts in system capacity, and that's over 290,000 installed panels across Alberta. It's a wonderful feeling to know that we are providing that much capacity into Alberta's renewable market, and our members live by a motto that goes along the lines of doing what we can 1 kilowatt hour at a time. Our members export back into the grid. Those exports feed their neighbors' homes. They feed the grid overall. They power the electrification process that Alberta is undergoing right now. And they get value out of that program. To date this year, our Solar Club members have earned about $15 million in value, which is greater than we even did in 2024, which was 14 million over the entire year. I'm also pleased to announce that this year we've launched the Solar Club Foundation, which is an organization that supports sustainable and ongoing humanitarian environmental needs. Has donated already $50,000 to deserving organizations that include Homes for Heroes, Fear is Not Love, WWF Canada, Kids Cancer Care, and the Calgary Public Library Foundation. So with that, I'd like to invite any and all of you to check out our website, explore what we do. Feel free to reach out to our team at sunshine@solarclub.ca, and one of our agents would be happy to help you with anything you need related to solar, whether that's solar rates or even just getting started with solar. And so now I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, Heather McKenzie. Heather McKenzie is the Executive Director of Solar Alberta, where she and her team are working hard to accelerate Alberta's transition to a just and sustainable energy future. She is a seasoned leader, community organizer, and green business advocate. Prior to becoming the Executive Director of Solar Alberta, she worked as a government relations professional, ran her own business, and served as an elected trustee on the Edmonton Public School Board. She holds a master's in public administration and a master's in international development, and has undergraduate degrees in both sociology and history. She believes that investing in solar is a very concrete way that everyday Albertans can take meaningful action on climate change. I will now pass the mic over to Heather to begin her presentation.
Thank you, Darren. Really appreciate that and appreciate you being here today. Just going to get my screen share going there. All right, so let's jump into solar for your home or business, shall we? I see there's quite a few of you on the line today, so thank you for joining us. In this presentation, I'm going to provide an overview of the solar sector in Alberta, including growth trends and the different types of solar installations in our province. Then I'm going to explain how a typical solar installation works on a home or business in Alberta. Following that, I will outline the many financial considerations related to solar. And to wrap up, I'm going to tackle a few of our most frequently asked questions, including how to find a solar installer. All right, so let's start by digging into some of the trends that we're seeing in the solar sphere in Alberta. In recent years, Alberta has seen tremendous growth in all types of solar. As you can see from these graphs, whether we are talking large utility scale solar systems, which is the top graph, or much smaller arrays, the bottom graph, all have been trending up in this sunny province of ours. Solar used to be seen by some as a risky investment, but now it's really accepted as a logical and necessary component of our diversified energy sector that will continue to grow in usage and market share. This shift in perception is illustrated by the impressive growth that the solar sector has experienced in Alberta over the past 10 years in particular, which we'll provide some more details on today. A quick note to start. When we talk about the growth of solar in Alberta, we're mostly talking about solar photovoltaics, or you'll hear us say solar PV. And we're not typically talking much about solar thermal. So solar PV harnesses the sun's light to produce electricity, while solar thermal harnesses the sun's heat, usually to heat water. Solar PV is really taking off in Alberta, and that's partially because it works really well in northern climates. Solar PV actually has better production capabilities in colder weather. They even use it in space. So what has been driving this growth of solar in Alberta? There are many reasons why Alberta has become Canada's solar powerhouse, but as you can see from this map, from the Government of Canada, Alberta is next only to Saskatchewan in terms of solar PV generating potential. We are also one of the few provinces in Canada where a private solar power developer can sell power directly to customers through a power purchase agreement, which you might hear referred to as a PPA. And investors clearly see the potential. In 2023, Alberta received 85% of Canada's overall investment in solar and wind. Another reason for the growth of solar PV, not just in Alberta, but around the world, is that the cost of solar has come down a lot in recent years. Between 2010 and 2020, the cost of solar dropped by 90%. We also have good renewable energy targets contributing to the growth of solar in Alberta. So in 2017, Alberta's Renewable Electricity Act legislated the goal of generating at least 30% of our province's electricity from renewable sources by 2030. Setting a concrete goal like this helps set the stage for the growth of solar and wind in Alberta. And as a result, until 2 years ago, the province was on track to meet this 30% renewables target before the 2030 goal. However, in 2023, the Government of Alberta imposed a 7-month moratorium on solar and wind farms in our province. And then they implemented new permanent discriminatory legislation against renewables. And so unfortunately, it's no longer certain that we will achieve that goal. As a result of recent punitive actions by the Government of Alberta, despite our incredible potential, investment in solar farms in Alberta has all but dried up. Business Renewable Centre Canada reported last January that power purchase agreements have dropped by 99% from 2023, when we received 85% of Canada's overall investment in solar and wind. Before I explain more about the trends that we're seeing, I just want to quickly review the 5 main types of solar system sizes and purposes in the province. This is important context for you to have in order to understand the broader trends and also where solar on your home or business will fit into Alberta's solar ecosystem. Systems that have the capacity to generate more than 5 megawatts of energy are classified as utility scale. You've probably heard these power plants referred to as solar farms. Utility-scale solar projects can be sized to generate as much energy as is approved by the Alberta Utilities Commission. So they can maximize the solar energy generating potential of their site and participate in Alberta's energy market just like any other power plant. The solar farm here is the Traverse Solar Project in Vulcan County. It's Canada's largest solar farm and is 465 megawatts in size. Utility-scale solar has been in the news a lot over the past few years, as solar farms have become increasingly difficult to build because of recent actions that I mentioned earlier taken by the Government of Alberta. There's also industrial solar. Industrial solar installations are used primarily to meet the energy needs of an industrial site. Alberta's oil and gas sites have used solar to generate some of their electricity since the early 2000s. Electricity from these installations is referred to as behind the meter, meaning it's produced on the site it is primarily meant to serve. So the electricity is generated on the customer side of the utility electricity meter. Industrial solar can be utility scale in size, despite being generating electricity on the customer side, because Alberta's industrial sites often need a lot of electricity to operate. By way of example, this picture shows the 58 megawatt Scotford Refinery solar farm completed in 2024. The energy generated by this solar farm is primarily being used to power Shell Canada's Scotford Refinery. This solar farm provides approximately 20% of the refinery's energy needs. After utility scale and industrial, the next most common type of solar we have in Alberta is called microgeneration. In Alberta, microgeneration refers to solar installations that are under 5 megawatts. There are both large and small scale microgeneration systems. Large microgeneration systems are over 150 kilowatts. They're often called commercial systems. They often power bigger buildings or operations such as farms or recreation centers. This slide shows some large microgeneration from around Alberta, including Genesis Place in Airdrie, a poultry farm in Linden, and Banff's Fenlands Recreation Centre. Then we also have microgeneration arrays under 150 kilowatts, which are considered small microgen systems. Again, here we still see some larger projects. Despite the micro and small names, some of these arrays help power malls and schools. This slide includes the new solar installation on the roof of Calgary's Chinook Centre Mall, as well as an array on Canmore Collegiate High School. Small microgeneration also refers to residential solar installations. You've likely spotted a few solar arrays on homes in your neighborhood. These residentials are very small, sometimes around 7 to 11 kilowatts, just depending on the home, but much smaller than the others. So unless you're joining us today from a large industrial facility, solar for your home or business will likely be accomplished through Alberta's microgeneration regulation, which came into effect in 2008, and it's still the best microgeneration regulation in the country. Where utility capacity exists, this regulation allows homes and businesses to meet their own electricity needs by generating electricity from renewable or alternative energy sources. To become a microgenerator, the application process is much less onerous than the process for large power plants because of this regulation. One of the reasons this application process is much less onerous than for a large power plant is because all microgeneration installations, whether residential or commercial, must be sized to produce equal to or less than the annual on-site electricity consumption. So in essence, you aren't a for-profit business like a traditional power plant. For example, if your household currently consumes 5,000 kilowatt hours of electricity per year, you cannot install a solar system that will produce more than that over the course of a year. Similarly, if you have a business that consumes 30,000 kilowatt hours of electricity per year, you can install a solar system that produces up to that amount per year. I do want to briefly mention that there are a couple of parts of the province where you're not currently able to export electricity and generate credits from the grid. Although this is relatively rare, we are advocating to the utilities to address that issue. You or your prospective installer can check with your local utility, such as EPCOR, ENMAX, Fortis, or ATCO, about whether you happen to be in a non-export area. We have a page on our website with the contact info and capacity mapping info for the 4 primary electric utility providers. And you can reach out to them about this topic, and also you can ask them how things are going if you encounter any delays in your connectivity process. So we're just going to pop the link to that in the chat. All right, in addition to microgeneration, industrial solar and utility scale solar projects, the community solar space is also emerging in Alberta. Community generation is where a group of people come together and invest in a solar development that is not on their own property. A number of cooperatives, community leagues, and indigenous nations are leading the way with community generation in Alberta. Here's the Renfrew Solar Carport at the Spark Science Centre in Calgary. It has 2,292 solar panels and it produces 1.2 million kilowatt hours of electricity annually. While community generation is still in its early stages in Alberta, it has the potential to allow apartment dwellers, renters, and others who cannot or do not have a solar appropriate roof an opportunity to contribute to solar production in Alberta and experience the associated financial benefits. We have numerous free webinars about community generation that you can find on our YouTube channel. We also have a couple of members actively fundraising for community generation projects, and at this time you can look those up on our solar investment opportunities page on our website. So now that you have a better understanding about the different types of solar in Alberta, I'm just going to shift back to explaining some of the trends and growth patterns that we've been seeing. Let's return to the first graph from the beginning of the presentation, which shows the growth of utility scale systems. Remember that these are also called solar farms or solar power plants. They are systems that have the capacity to generate more than 5 megawatts of energy. In December 2017, Alberta had 15 megawatts of utility-scale solar generating capacity. By November 2024, solar farm capacity totaled over 1,800 megawatts. That was extremely promising growth. Sadly, our utility-scale solar has largely been flatlined in the last couple of years due to new government regulations. There was only an increase of 50 megawatts of utility-scale solar in the last year. Simply put, a lot of shovels just aren't hitting the ground, so even for planned and approved projects. However, if projects don't continue to be stalled due to new Government of Alberta red tape and costs, solar farms are anticipated to increase by an additional 6,500 megawatts of generating capacity by 2029. Now let's come back to the more positive story, the more uplifting story about microgeneration in Alberta. Here I showed this one at the beginning as well. The top graph shows the incredible rate of microgeneration growth on homes and businesses from 2021 to 2026. In 2021, we had approximately 6,000 homes and businesses with solar in Alberta, and just 5 years later, we have more than 46,000 systems. In 2021, we were getting about 100 new sites a month. The graph on the bottom shows the growth in the last year, which averaged almost 900 new sites per month. So that's quite an increase from 100 just a few short years ago. So for a total of more than 10,000 solar PV systems installed in the past year. Overall, microgenerators in the province today constitute approximately 470 megawatts of installed capacity. To contrast that capacity with the utility scale solar that we saw earlier, by January 2026, solar farm capacity in Alberta totaled more than 1,850 megawatts. So microgenerators make a smaller contribution to our grid on the whole, but they still make a meaningful contribution. When you put all of the microgenerators together, we make up a nice big solar farm akin to the Traverse Solar Farm in Vulcan County that I mentioned earlier. Another interesting fact is that our microgenerators alone are producing more than twice as much electricity from solar as the provinces of BC and Saskatchewan combined. In 2025, BC had only 110 megawatts of solar in total on their grid, and Saskatchewan had just 108 megawatts. Those numbers are a combination of both utility scale and microgeneration in BC and Saskatchewan. So Alberta microgenerators are certainly not a bit player when you consider us as a whole. In fact, due to the drastic decrease in utility scale solar since 2023, since the 2023 moratorium on renewable power plants, and due to the dramatic increase in microgeneration over the past few years, oddly enough, in 2025, Alberta saw more micro and small scale solar added to the grid than utility scale solar. As you can see from this graph, that is an enormous change from how things were trending until 2024. It's exciting news for microgenerators to be playing an increasingly prominent role, but it is important to realize that it will be impossible for us to achieve a net zero grid in Alberta alone. We can't do it alone. We actually need to see and continue seeing growth of all types of solar in order to achieve our province's stated goal of a net zero electricity grid by 2050. Even when combining all types of solar, it still makes up only a small percentage of Alberta's total electricity generating capacity. In 2025, we were just 4%. These two graphs are from the Alberta Market Surveillance Administrator report for the last quarter of 2025. The graph on the top shows the types of generation responsible for setting electricity prices in Alberta. There are a few things that we really like to look at and find neat about this graph. The first is that starting in 2021, and particularly in 2023, 2024, and 2025, we see a small emerging role for solar generation, indicated by the strip of light yellow near the top. This is a small role that we play in setting and reducing the price of electricity in Alberta. Of course, as you can see on the graph, compared to natural gas, which is involved in the orange, red, pink, and purple strips on the graph, solar and also wind, indicated by green, are still fairly small players in Alberta's electricity system. This graph also shows the phase out of coal generation, indicated by the black, which disappears by 2025. Despite renewables still being a minor player on the electricity grid, you can see on the bottom graph that the increase in both solar and wind capacity have had a meaningful impact on power pool prices. And according to the report, the increased capacity of these renewable electricity sources has been putting downward pressure on the price of electricity for everyday Albertans. One reason that solar can reduce the price of electricity for everyday Albertans is because it costs nothing to operate a solar system. A solar array is also very low on maintenance costs, so those are very minimal compared to other forms of power plants. So there's ample evidence that utility scale solar can and is bringing the price of electricity down for all Albertans. And a recent study out of California also showed that over the long term, rooftop solar also makes electricity cheaper for everyone too, even those who don't have solar panels. Rooftop solar helps decrease peak demand on our grid, which reduces the requirements for utilities to expand the grid. And it also reduces the need for Albertans to buy electricity from other jurisdictions like BC or the USA. All right, we've completed our overview of the solar sector in Alberta. Let's turn now to how solar generation works on a typical home or business in our province. Please imagine this is your home or business. First, sunlight hits the solar modules that are installed on your roof, which is indicated by number 1 on this graphic. In the northern hemisphere, south-facing roofs get the best sun, but flat roofs or east and west-facing roofs also work well. The PV modules convert sunlight into DC or direct current electricity. This electricity travels to the inverter, indicated by number 2, which converts the DC electricity into the AC or alternating current electricity that your home uses. This electricity is then fed into your home's main electrical panel, shown by number 3. From here, the electricity generated by the solar system can go in one of 2 directions. When you install solar, you get a bi-directional meter from your utility provider, and some of us already have them, shown by number 5. The bidirectional meter will keep track of both the electricity taken from the grid as well as the electricity put onto the grid. When your solar system is generating electricity, anything in your home that is plugged in, such as an appliance or an EV, an electric vehicle, will use that electricity first, as indicated by number 4. Since this electricity is coming directly from your solar system rather than the electricity grid, you aren't being charged for that electricity. If your solar system is generating more electricity than your house is consuming, then the extra electricity can go back to the main power grid, indicated by number 6, because it isn't being used by the household. This will show up as a credit on your electricity bill. When calculating the maximum size of your solar system, an installer will typically review your previous electricity bills. As mentioned earlier, under Alberta's microgeneration regulation, the maximum size of a home or business's solar system will be based on your typical annual electricity usage. In Alberta, homes with solar energy will almost always remain connected to the utility grid. This allows the grid to serve as an auxiliary system that will supply the home with electricity when it needs more than your solar installation produces. For instance, at night when it's cloudy or during the darker winter months. Also, the home's connection to the grid is what enables you, the homeowner or business owner, to generate credits in the summer when you're producing often more electricity than you need. All right, because we're looking at energy production over the period of a year, your solar installation in Alberta will usually underproduce from November to February and then usually overproduce from May to August. This graph shows the typical solar production curve in Alberta. You can see that not much energy gets produced from November to February because there is much less sunlight during those months. These two graphs come from a Solar Alberta staff member's solar array, which was connected to the grid in January 2022. The graph on the top shows the monthly comparison over the last 4.5 years, up to the first week of June. As you can see, this graph follows the same shape of the graph on the previous slide, with much lower production from November through February. But there is some variation in monthly production based on cloud cover, rain, snow, and even smoke, especially in the summer months. The graph on the bottom, meanwhile, shows the yearly comparison, and that even though there was variance in the amount of energy produced each month, the solar array produced approximately the same amount of electricity over the course of each year. So let's review some financial considerations related to solar. One of the primary reasons people adopt solar in Alberta is because getting solar for your home or business will reduce two utility bill components. First, it will reduce the amount you pay for electricity. With a properly sized system, if you have enough good roof space, over the course of the year, you can save close to 100% of the energy charge component of your bill. This is the amount of power in kilowatt hours that you consume at your home. You won't need to pay the utility company for that because they're no longer making your electricity. But it's important to note that this isn't immediate. What you'll want to look at is your energy charge over the course of the year, because the credit you generate for excess exported electricity in the summer can offset those less sunny winter months when you are importing and buying more electricity from your retailer. Second, solar will reduce the variable component of what you pay for transmission and distribution. Transmission and distribution fees cover the electrical infrastructure that's needed to connect you to the grid. These costs have both a fixed and a variable component. The fixed component will not change regardless of how much electricity you use in the month. But solar can help reduce the variable component, which changes based on the amount of electricity you use from the grid. In addition to the fixed transmission and distribution costs that solar cannot eliminate, solar also won't eliminate administrative or local access fees. These are fixed charges that come from simply being attached to the grid, and you should be wary of any salesperson who tells you, "Solar will reduce all your electricity bills to zero. for now and forever. You may have seen those ads. That said, if your microgeneration credits for electricity exported are large enough, some months you can offset your entire bill, as those credits can go towards your fixed charges too. Lastly, solar is also unlikely to impact your home or water heating charges because most homes in Alberta use natural gas furnaces and water heat. If you want to reduce your heating charges and move towards being fully net zero, you can switch to electric devices that your solar system can power, such as a heat pump for heating and cooling your home or a heat pump water heater. If you're interested in solar for your home or business, you can rest assured in the knowledge that renewable energy and energy efficiency are home improvements that pay for themselves. Solar panels are generally warranted for 25 years, and they can actually last up to 40 or 50 years. So they will add value to your home for quite some time and pay for themselves over time by reducing your monthly electricity bills through the two mechanisms I outlined in the previous slide. Nowadays, a typical home installation can cost between $10,000 to $30,000 and can take somewhere between 7 to 15 years to pay back. Your installer will typically calculate your estimated payback time as part of the install quote process. Your payback time will depend on your particular circumstances and can differ significantly from region to region, even around our province, as well as the size and cost of your solar array will impact things, the amount of electricity you consume impacts things, and of course the mechanism you choose to finance the installation will impact your payback period as well. And as we mentioned earlier, your system will be sized to cover your current electricity usage. This means you can improve upon your system payback time by taking steps to further reduce your electricity consumption, or by completing energy efficiency upgrades like switching to energy efficient appliances or turning off the lights and appliances more after your solar installation has been completed. And finally, another consideration for the overall cost and payback time with solar is the property value increase. There isn't much data available in Canada yet regarding home resale value with solar, but research in the US has shown that homes with solar arrays typically sell for 4 to 7% more than those without. This is likely because a house with solar panels already installed will have significantly reduced future electricity bills, which many home buyers appreciate. And because solar panels are typically warranted for 25 years and actually can last much longer than that, they are ultimately a long-term improvement to a home. Although an installation of $10,000 to $30,000 is a lot for many Albertans to afford, there are some solar financing programs available to help. 26 municipalities around Alberta are currently implementing the Clean Energy Improvement Program, though admittedly a few are paused because they're fully subscribed. This program is known as SEEP. It's for residential properties in 26 municipalities, and 3 are also implementing SEEP for commercial properties. The 3 that are doing both residential and commercial are Calgary, Edmonton, and Sturgeon County. SEEP is a low-interest and long-term financing approach that allows for solar or energy efficiency upgrades to be financed through the property tax payment process by having the cost of the upgrades tied to the property rather than the property owner. With SEEP, that monthly payment can typically be passed on to the next property owner if the new owner moves in before the previous owner completes the payments. So this program is particularly beneficial for folks who aren't sure if they're going to be staying in their home for a full 7 to 15 years of payback period. Some SEEP programs will pay out for upfront costs, and then they'll pay the contractor directly for the remaining costs when the project is complete. Some SEEP programs will allow you to include some roof or electrical wiring needs in your solar financing package. Each municipality is running the program a little bit differently. For those of you interested in exploring SEEP, we offered a webinar last February that went into more detail than we're able to cover today. The recording is available on our YouTube channel. You can also check seep.abmunis.ca for more information about this program and to see where your municipality is at in the SEEP adoption process. All right, in terms of commercial solar incentives for any business owners on the line today, in addition to SEEP in Calgary, Edmonton, and Sturgeon County, there are also 2 federal tax incentives available. There is the Clean Technology Investment Tax Credit. This is a refundable tax credit for 20 or 30% of the capital cost of a business investment into solar. Then there is the Accelerated Investment Incentive, which allows businesses to immediately write off the full cost of solar. So I was at a presentation recently where they described some of these benefits. I mean, depending on the size of your business and the size of your solar system, there are some instances where people are saving like $200,000 in tax because of this. So these are pretty good incentives. You might want to check them out. All right, now that we've discussed various financial considerations, we're going to get into our frequently asked questions, including the one we get most common, which is, how do I find a solar installer? So Solar Alberta has you covered when it comes to how to find an installer. An excellent resource for finding a solar installer in Alberta is the Solar Alberta website. On that website, you'll find a map that shows solar installations near you, as well as a solar directory, which gets about 20,000 hits each year. It lists more than 80 Solar Alberta business members, and you can see helpful information like how many systems a company has installed or how long they've been in business. You can also filter by various commitments and certifications that some of our members have, such as whether they're B Corp certified, whether they're a living wage employer. These sorts of things can really help you start to narrow down your search. Also, and importantly, you can submit a request for proposals or quotes from our members right on our website. We recommend you get at least 3 quotes. You'll want to compare the quotes to determine how long the warranties are for the products and their workmanship, what assumptions have they made when estimating your payback times. Also ask about their process for maintenance. Inverters usually have a 10-year warranty, and solar modules, as I mentioned, typically have around 25. Warranties for the workmanship can differ quite dramatically. Some will do 2 years, some will do up to 10. So when getting quotes, we really recommend you request references and proof of insurance as well from the companies. We also recommend you compare the installer's financing options. Financing options can impact the overall cost of a solar array, so it's important to be aware of what the cost differences may be. For example, some installers may offer you a loan with 0% interest. Rather than charging interest, these 0% interest loans may charge an additional upfront financing fee. Before signing a contract, make sure you're clear on any financing details, including any flat rates, interest rates, and any terms. Also, financing options change very frequently, so your installer is going to be a great source of information for this widely varying field. Another common question we get is, how do I choose a retailer? Here in Alberta, we can choose our electricity provider, so the cost of electricity will depend on the retailer. Many Albertans can choose the regulated rate or seek a competitive price retailer, 8 of whom are currently members of Solar Alberta and can be found on our directory. All retailers will come with different rates. To shop around for an affordable rate, you can use the Utilities Consumer Advocates Cost Comparison Tool. It lays out all the different retailers available in Alberta and their different rates. Your electricity retailer may also offer a solar-specific retail plan, through which you can opt into different electricity rates, higher during the summer if you're overproducing, and lower during the winter when you'll be underproducing. These different rates can be beneficial because it allows you to export electricity from your home to the grid at the higher rate when your system generates more electricity in the summer, and then pay less in the winter when you're not generating as much electricity. We have a webinar recording from our January 2026 solar show that delves into more details about solar-specific pricing. You can check the link in the chat. In order to be able to hold your retailer accountable to our Alberta Solar Business Code of Conduct, though, you should primarily be plugging 8 retailers, the 8 retailers from our directory into that cost comparison tool, you won't be able to hold the other retailers accountable to Solar Alberta's Code of Conduct. The same is true for your installer. If you select an installer that's not listed on our directory and they're not a member of ours, then you won't be able to hold them accountable to the Alberta Solar Business Code of Conduct, and you won't be able to file complaints through us for redress if something goes awry. So that's just an important piece to keep in mind. Our Code of Conduct is found under the Consumer Protection tab on our homepage, and our directory is under the Go Solar tab. One question we often get related to financial considerations is about roof materials and roof condition. The 2 best roofing materials for solar installations are asphalt shingles and standing seam metal. With standing seam metal, your installer doesn't typically have to penetrate the roof for the installation. Rather, they can just clip the solar onto the roof instead. Obviously, the best time to get solar is when you have a new roof or an almost new roof. If your roof is more than 10 years old, you can expect at some point you'll need to have the panels taken off and then reinstalled after replacing the shingles. An estimated cost for that might be around $5,000, but it'll depend a lot on your unique circumstances. If you have an asphalt roof that is more than 20 years old, installers will generally recommend replacing the shingles before installing solar. If you're unsure about the age of your roof, it is best to call a professional to assess the roof condition. The good news is that solar panels will likely protect and extend the life of the roof that's covered by them. And in more good news, we recently added a roofing category to our directory, as an increasing number of our business members are offering this service in conjunction with solar. We also have a checklist on our website that you can download to review a number of important solar-ready home considerations, including roof materials and design. All right, I know it's not on your minds right now because it's so warm out, but when we give this presentation at our solar show in January, people always want to know, what about snow? What about snow? So, snow does not impact solar energy production very much in Alberta. You likely remember this graph showing a typical solar production curve in Alberta from earlier in my presentation. You can see that not much electricity gets produced in November to December. The primary reason for lower solar electricity production in these months is because there is much less light than during the other months. If you'll recall, the production in the summer makes up for the losses in the winter. And as long as you have adequate roof space, your installer can ensure that your system is sized to offset your consumption over the full course of the year. Interestingly, a study out of NATE, shown in the image at the top, determined that snow cover can reduce winter productivity in the Edmonton area around 3%, give or take. Because snow arrives right around the same time that we have the most darkness in Alberta, and because snow melts off the solar panels quite quickly on warmer days. Your solar panels might get a bit of snow cover, but cleaning the snow off is typically not recommended. When you try to clear your panels of snow, you risk damaging the panels themselves. You might actually hurt yourself too. But damaging the panels could have a much greater negative impact on their efficiency than the impact of the snow itself. We also get asked about the impacts of hail. So the good news is that solar panels are stronger than you might think. The tempered glass on most modern solar panels has been tested with golf ball size hailstones, traveling more than 100 kilometers per hour. Some panels have been tested to a higher standard than even that. That's why you are seeing car dealerships starting to install solar carports, which serve dual purpose. They produce electricity, as we've been talking about, and they also protect the cars parked beneath them. That's why we often talk about solar panels can maybe protect your roof too, although we haven't seen much research on that. It's just a theory. That said, while most hail will not damage solar panels, in the rare event of very large hail, such as baseball or grapefruit-sized hail, of course it could damage the solar panels. There's really not much that can withstand hail of that size. Another financial question we often get, especially in relation to questions around extreme weather in general, is about insurance with solar panels. Some folks have been able to simply notify their insurance company about adding solar panels without paying extra, while others do end up paying a nominal fee. Ultimately, insurance costs will depend on the size of the system and a variety of other factors. When talking about solar on your home or business with an insurance company, it's super important to communicate that the system is essentially not for profit, unlike a traditional large power plant. That you're going to get credits on your utility bill for export to the grid rather than cash for export. You're not running a home power plant as a business. If they think you're running a home business of some kind, that can really confuse matters with an insurance agency. While we can't recommend any specific insurance companies, you're welcome to become a member in the Solar Alberta Facebook group, where 14,000 people often ask other group members about the best insurance options. You might get more opinions than you bargained for, though, in that setting. All right, so with that, I've covered some of the main ones, but I'm going to turn over to Stephanie now to moderate our Q&A, and look forward to hearing more of your questions over the coming 40 or so odd minutes.
Thanks, Heather. And just a reminder, if you have put a question in the chat, please take it over and pop it into the Q&A, because that's where we'll be pulling. There's so much going on in the chat, we simply can't ask the questions from there. So we will pull them from the Q&A section, and we have a little thumbs up upvotes. So in case we can't get to all your questions today, please upvote the questions of your fellow attendees, and then we will be able to answer those questions that people want to know most about. So we will just dive in. So Terry Brown says, I manage a commercial building with 4 commercial tenants and 5 residential tenants. They each have their own meters and pay their own bills. The roof is ideal for solar, large slope roof facing south. Is there a way for the owner to install solar panels for the building even if the electrical meters are not in his name?
Good question. And I know there's a lot of folks getting very creative. So I hate to do this, but I'm going to refer you to our directory. I want you to hit up our members. We have a whole bunch of them who do commercial solar, and they also deal with this sort of thing all the time. And I know that our members have found a variety of creative methods of helping people get solar when they have a situation where they all have, one common roof but different utility meters. So I definitely want to encourage you to ask our installers directly. They are the experts on that topic of your individual installation, and they'll know best, especially for your municipality, what will work there too. So there are complicating factors, related to aggregating sort of various, utility meter issues. So I know this is something also, to be frank, the microgeneration regulation, when it's reviewed in the coming years, we are going to be having conversations then as well about this concept of, can you aggregate multiple different users across one common property. So our members will be able to advise you as the current status of whether you can move on that. And then stay tuned in the coming years, because if you can't move immediately, there might be changes in the next few years or more on that front. And certainly we are actively advocating for improvements to the microgen reg anytime we see that folks are having trouble participating. So so definitely check out our installers. Definitely request a quote through our website, and some of them will come to you and let you know if it's doable or not in your particular location. I will say, there are multi-unit buildings around the province that do have solar, so there's definitely systems and creative ways that folks are making this happen. And I know a couple municipalities have even had rebates in place for multi-unit residential buildings in particular. I do know things get a little more complicated when you combine commercial with residential, though, and that's why I'm hesitant to comment on the specific instance. But hit up our members. They are the experts, and many of them are here on the call today, and I thank them for joining us.
Great, thanks, Heather. Here's another great question. How about new builds that don't have a 1-year generation history? How does that get assessed?
Yeah, so I'm actually in a new build, and I came from an apartment that was a condo where we didn't have any history ourselves, and our new home didn't have any history. So our installer was able to apply for kind of a standard rate for our home. And your utility, whether it's EPCOR, NMAX, Atcor, and Fortis, they and your installer will know what a standard rate will be. I think we are in a fourplex, and we were able to get a 7 kilowatt system with no history or background. And then after we developed our history and background over a few years with an electric vehicle, we were able to increase our system at that time. So there's definitely some standards that can be applied. They can also apply certain standards for if you are buying an EV and you know you're buying an EV, you can't apply for an increased size until you're further along in the process. So for example, if I had my proof of purchase and proof of insurance and everything, I might have been able to incorporate that in the estimate size up front. So there are some standard rates, and your installers will know what those are if they've worked in your area before. And if it's an installer that hasn't worked in your area and they don't know what your utility standard rates are, you can always call your utility yourself, or just ask your installer to make sure they have that conversation about the standard rates in your area.
Great. Mark Taylor says, I currently have a residential solar installation, but will be moving to an acreage with a business shortly. Is it possible to intentionally design and install a system to be net positive?
Good question. I had thought until, and I'm going to be perfectly honest, I thought the microgeneration regulation didn't really allow that. And then I saw some posts yesterday from Riverdale in Edmonton where they seem to be doing that. So I don't know how they're doing that, because I was pretty sure the microgeneration regulation only enabled you to generate as much as you consume on site, not more than that. I will say that that we are advocating for some changes to that. So one of the changes that we'd like to see with the microgeneration regulation in the coming years is we would like to see anyone with 200 amp service or less be allowed to have unlimited export. We want to get away from all this sizing business, because it's very administratively burdensome. It's a huge burden for EPCOR, NMAX, Fortis, and ATCO to have to be constantly sizing everyone. It's a huge burden for installers to be sizing everyone. And of course, as microgenerators, it's just like, oh, we just want to maximize the potential of our roofs and our yards, right? So we're hoping that the government of Alberta will hear our request to get rid of the export limits for those on 200 amp service or less. But of course, that will not be happening in the near future. That's a request we have for regulatory change down the road. So as far as I know, you should only be allowed to produce as much electricity as you're consuming on site. Occasionally, you might end up producing more. As long as it's not a huge amount more, it's not a huge issue. But I don't think you can really set yourself up that way. Granted, I will say whatever's going on in Riverdale right now, I am curious about, because I was on Facebook the other day and people are talking about this. So anyways, maybe things are changing in front of me, but yeah, that, as far as I know, the microgeneration regulation's pretty clear about how much you should be sized for.
Okay. Samantha is asking, is a different type of power agreement required if I install solar, or can I keep my current agreement with my current retailer?
Oh, yeah, you can keep your current retailer. You don't have to change retailers. Like in Alberta, it's optional to change retailers. They can't really lock you in, so to speak. So yeah, you can stick with them. You might not want to if they don't offer any solar specific pricing plans, especially if you're overproducing in the summer. That's when you would want to switch it up. So nobody's forcing you to switch retailers. That's completely up to you. But if you want to make the most off your investment and you are someone who's overproducing in the summer months, then getting on a solar specific pricing plan with a retailer who can do that will just help with your payback on your investments. So, but yeah, no, it's totally up to you who your retailer is. That's not something anyone will foist upon you.
Okay. Terry Brown asking any tips on how to clean solar panels and how often?
Yeah, we just recommend you don't. Generally, I mean, there are a couple exceptions. If it's really bad, like if you've got a tree right above it shedding on them, you could look into that. I would recommend talking to your solar installer about your specific circumstances and asking for a recommendation from them. Generally speaking, I have put mine up. Gosh, they've been up almost 6 years now. We haven't touched them and we haven't cleaned them, and they're perfectly fine. Usually the rain cleans them off, and they're just fine. And anything you do to clean them might damage them. So unless you're operating a large commercial system and you have some, very good technology and training in how to do that safely, I would recommend just leaving it alone. And if you have specific circumstances that mean your panels are very dirty, I would check in with your solar installer and ask what they would recommend for cleaning, because they may have some techniques that are good for your system in particular to recommend. There are other things that solar installers can help you navigate, like Critter Guard. They can help you figure out if you should have Critter Guard on your system. Are there going to be squirrels running around under there? Are the pigeons going to go in there? So you want to have those conversations with them. You want to talk about snow shed. Are you about to shed a whole bunch of snow right on your neighbor's doorstep and make an enemy out of your neighbor, or what? So have a few conversations about some of these pieces, like the cleaning, the protection of of your neighbors and yourself from the snow coming off. And also, so Critter Guard is another important conversation to have with your installer. But a lot of that's very situational. And like I said, most often it's best to just leave your panels, and you'll maybe actually hurt your productivity more by trying to do something to them, and also potentially hurt yourself. So generally speaking, we just kind of recommend you leave them alone.
All right. We have Bob Morgan asking, in a typical single-family home, where is the inverter located? For example, next to the electrical panel on the roof or somewhere else?
Great question, and I think it really depends. We have a Solar Ready presentation on our YouTube channel. I think it touches a little bit on the inverter, but I can't remember specifically. Stephanie, do you recall from that presentation? Because I do think they are not always consistently located in the same
I think
place.
it really depends. Like
Yeah.
our inverter is in our garage.
Yeah,
But
okay.
we have panels on both our garage and our home.
Yeah, so it does really depend. So yeah, sorry I can't answer that one today. Definitely, hit up our members. They, again, are the experts on this. I will admit, and you heard my bio at the beginning, not an engineer, not an electrician, nor is Stephanie. So that's why I will refer you to our expert members, many of whom are on the line today. Couple of whom may even be advising you in the chat right now. So, but we do have a Solar Ready presentation where we touch a little bit on inverters, and I think that's on our YouTube channel.
Okay, another question from Samantha. What's the typical capacity of a household solar system in kilowatt?
Yeah, so that one is often 7, but that is changing, right? So when I started about 6 years ago, people would say, oh, it's 7 kilowatts in Alberta. But now, of course, more and more people have electric vehicles. We're seeing the electrification of all sorts of things. People are electric dryers now, where they used to use natural gas sometimes for their dryers. We're seeing people are getting smart with their stoves. They're switching over to electric stoves instead of natural gas stoves. People are getting smart with even hot tubs. People are doing electric hot tubs. So along with electric vehicles. So there's the electrification of everything is happening, which is awesome. But it does mean there's like an increase. So like a friend of mine just moved in across the street, and when I moved in, they said I could have 7 kilowatts, and when she moved in, she was allowed 11. So, it really is starting to increase a little bit as we electrify everything. So, and then of course, Edmonton, our production capability here is not quite as good as in Lethbridge, for example, so it'll also differ depending where you are in the province. It's still good though in Edmonton. Stephanie and I have to have an Edmonton versus Calgary, but it is, I will admit it's a bit better in Calgary.
Another question, and I'm not sure if this is referring to insurance, home insurance, or insurance on the solar panels themselves. It says, what is the insurance for?
Oh, okay. Well, why would you want insurance? I think like if your whole home burned down or something, I mean, you would want to be able to recover the cost of your solar system too, right? So, you know, when people say, well, why do I even want insurance? So you just want to, basically all you're doing is tucking your solar into your home insurance. And if your insurance company doesn't know that you have solar, and then you had like a massive home issue, I don't want to speculate what that is, but you know, I guess fire would be an example. If your home was on fire and your solar system went down and your insurance company didn't know you had solar, it might be harder to get them to repay that cost. So that's why you might want insurance on your home to include your solar.
Okay. Nayan, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, is saying one slide mentioned that the solar PV panel cost has reduced by 90%, but the cost of installation at residential homes has only increased since the last 3 years. Could you explain why the installation costs for supply and installation keeps increasing, though the cost of panels itself has reduced?
So the cost reduction happened mostly between 2010 and 2020. That's when we dropped by 90%. It hasn't dropped a huge amount since. So that's still really good, but it's like we're now pretty low, right? So the panel cost itself is only 1/3 approximately of your overall cost. Typically our members will say, your solar modules are going to be about 1/3 of the cost. All the other bits and pieces are about 1/3, and then labor cost is about 1/3. It's kind of how it breaks down. And so right now, over the last 3 years, you were asking, what we're seeing is the other bits are sometimes costing a bit more. For example, there's tariffs on aluminum, I believe, right now, and steel. So those costs for the racking system, sort of the systems around the solar, can increase a little bit. Also, cost of labor sometimes goes up, especially during boom times in Alberta. So when the oil sector is booming, it's very hard for our members to compete with the oil sector for electricians and engineers. And so in order to compete with the oil sector, they may have to pay their electricians more than they typically would have when Alberta's economy is not booming. And so there are a variety of factors that would go into the fact that solar is not necessarily cheaper over the last 3 years. So I thank you for that question, but it's a lot better than it was 13 years ago. So, so that was what I was referring to, was 13 years ago, you would have paid a lot more than you are today.
Okay, Jose is wondering, maybe Jose might not be from Alberta. How frequent is the price per kilowatt hour varying in Alberta? Is there a flat rate period?
Yeah, I'm not a market system expert. So for solar specific pricing, you can basically, if that's what we want to talk about here in this context, you can basically pick a rate for a time period. Now, we do have a virtual power plant webinar from last October, where some folks are starting to get creative with pricing. And so you could check out our October webinar about virtual power plants. It's a pilot here in Alberta where folks are getting creative with the pricing and other things. But generally speaking, when you're shifting as a home or business owner with solar, you're generally shifting for kind of a period of a number of months. So you're often picking your price for the spring to fall, and then you'll have your price for the winter. So that's typically how often you would change it right now. But yeah, there's some innovation happening on that. Some people are trying to figure out how to make homes a little bit more like large power plants and let them play the market a little bit more readily. So there is definitely creativity happening there. And yes, Alberta's market is very different from other provinces. We actually have a course in October where Paula, who's very expert on the whole system, will be teaching, and I recommend picking her brain if you can come to our course in October. It's in the evenings, a couple Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Paula is much more knowledgeable about our entire market than I am, so she could talk to you more broadly about the power pricing and things of that nature.
Okay. We have Mario asking about how to know when SEEP dates are set. So he says, is the current SEEP date still set at September 22nd, 2026 at 9 a.m. based in Calgary?
I was going to say, that sounds like a Calgary. Yeah, so Calgary will probably have a newsletter, I'm guessing you can sign up for. Most municipalities, if you go to their website for SEEP, they often have sign up here to get updates on when our next programs launch. I know whenever Calgary is launching, I get their email, so I'm definitely on their newsletter, and I always know when they're launching their next round. So I would recommend signing up on the SEEP newsletter for your respective municipality to learn about when they're launching their next round of intake. And yeah, definitely your municipality will be the go-to for your particular SEEP intake. Everyone's a little different. Some municipalities have fairly stable financing for their SEEP programs, others do not, and so it really that really impacts their intake processes.
Okay. Drake is wondering about door-to-door tactics, and is bringing our attention to the fact that BC has announced a ban on this practice as of August 1st, and so he's wondering what we at Solar Alberta advise to solar curious clients about door-to-door sales.
Yeah, absolutely. So our code of conduct is actually really clear on door-to-door sales. If you're talking to a Solar Alberta member, they should not be using any high-pressure tactics at the door. They should not be taking any of your money within 24 hours of meeting you. They should not be taking your signatures within 24 hours of meeting you. So there's a lot of really strict rules for our members when it comes to door-to-door tactics. If you ever encounter a member of ours who's breaking that rule, you need to definitely report them to our consumer protection link, because we're trying to make sure everybody is following the same process and protocol. Unfortunately, there are some folks in the province who are not Solar Alberta members who are still using very high pressure sales tactics, trying to get folks locked into various contracts within, as quickly as possible. So that's a real shame. You do need to be very careful who you're talking to at the door. First of all, make sure they're a Solar Alberta member so that you can hold them accountable to the code of conduct. And don't always trust if they say they're a Solar Alberta member. Check our directory, because some people will pretend to be us or pretend to be with us, and they're not. So go directly to the source, go to solaralberta.ca, look for yourself to see if that company is a member. Definitely just take their, if they're at the door, you just, oh, thank you for this information, so nice to meet you. We'll give it some thought. That's generally a best practice is it's nice to meet you. Appreciate the information. We'll review your website, give it some thought. Buy yourself time to go and check our website. Make sure that they're going to be someone who you can hold accountable. And also, never go with the first and only person you meet. Get those quotes, get multiple quotes. Really do your research. This is a huge investment. I mean, even the smallest system, we're talking probably 10,000, right? So you don't want to just throw money around. You want to make sure you're vetting your solar installer well and do your due diligence like you would with any other major purchase. If you went to buy a car, would you just buy the first car that drove by your door? Probably not, right? So do your due diligence. It's fine to meet people, but don't be signing anything at the door. Don't be giving anyone any money at the door, and make sure that you buy yourself some time. And all our members should be giving you the space to have a second follow-up meeting with them.
Super. We have Mark, who is wondering, Heather, if you can comment on the recent tax that the government has announced to facilitate recycling of solar panels.
Yes, thank you, Mark, for this question. We are appalled at the recent tax. It's ridiculous. I laugh because it's so bad. Stephanie and I are just like, it's so bad. So the government of Alberta has decided in October, anyone in the province, whether they're a tiny little micro generator or a massive solar farm, we're all paying $14 per panel for the end of life recycling, and you have to pay it up front. Just for comparison, a TV, anything larger than 30-inch, so a massive TV would be recycled for $2.70 at the end of life. And we're being asked to pay 5 times more at the beginning before they even know what the cost of recycling solar will be in Alberta. They're not even going to know what the cost is for many, many years because, of course, most of the solar was installed here in the last 10 years. We still have a good 15 years to go before any of this might even possibly hit recycling. It's probably going to go for reuse first. So, we could be 40 years out from recycling. And even then, everything could have changed in the market. So this government is trying to collect all those fees up front, just hoarding this cash. I don't know what they're planning to do with it because there's no way you're going to need that much for recycling in Alberta. And it's extremely frustrating because 3 or 4 years ago, when we were first approached about recycling solar in Alberta, we were told time and time again, we are putting solar in with other electronic recycling in Alberta. You're going to be tucked in and treated the same as everyone else. So how can you tell us for 3 to 4 years that we're going to be treated the same as everyone else and then charge solar 5 times more than a comparable product? It's absolutely a market manipulation by this government. It is meant to oppress and suppress the solar sector. It is meant to give natural gas the advantage with the power plant sector, but it's hurting the microgenerators too in the meantime. And so it's really, really disappointing to see the government moving in this direction. We are working hard to protest this, and we have a few months here to protest. So I really would encourage you, if you can support us in any way with our advocacy. We are collecting donations. We have got 6 media hits in the last month, and with your support, we might be able to spread the word more about how this is really super unfair and completely at odds with where we need to be headed. I mean, we're trying to get to net zero grid by 2050 here, people. Last time I checked, that was still the goal. And there's no way we're going to be able to get there if we just keep layering layer upon layer upon layer of punitive regulations for solar. So we're super disappointed by this announcement. We're working hard to fight it, but we absolutely need your help because, to be quite frank, government's not listening to us, so they need to hear from the general public. We're working really hard on a grassroots campaign right now with the letter writing, the lawn signs. We need the government to hear from more Albertans, not just the societies and associations of Alberta. So hopefully you guys can help us with that. And thank you, Mark, for the question.
Super. There's a question about whether this session is being recorded for viewing later. The answer is yes. And we'll send out a link to any of the links, or a document with any of the links that were shared as well in the chat. It's difficult to send out the whole chat. So you probably won't get the whole chat. So if there's something you really wanted from the chat, go and grab it. But all the links that were shared in the chat will go out. Now the next question is, what maintenance requirement is required for home solar panels? How is it achieved and how much does it cost?
For solar PV, very little. Solar thermal is a totally different topic that often requires much more maintenance. But solar PV, very, very little maintenance. Definitely make sure you check with your installer about their workmanship warranty, how long it'll go for, what's going to happen when the time comes if you do need something. As I mentioned, inverters are only warranted usually for about 10 years. So assuming that your modules are going to be there for 25 to 50 years, you are probably going to have to swap that baby out a few times over the lifespan. So there is that. But yeah, I've been sitting here with solar for 6 years and I haven't had any maintenance costs. I think we did add Critter Guard on recently. But you can do that up front, so that's not really maintenance. That's more just an add-on that we realized we wanted later after we got a little tired of the pigeons. I don't mind co-working with them a little bit, but sometimes they can be a bit distracting when I hear them cooing above my window all day. How about you, Stephanie? Have you had any maintenance costs on your system?
Um, we did have our installer out last summer to just make sure everything was tight, and so that was like a small, I don't know, a small fee.
It was a small fee, yeah. Because you're beyond the workmanship warranty.
No, it's not I don't think it was the workmanship warranty. It was just like checking. I'm not even really sure.
Okay, yeah, but it was a small fee. Yeah, I've had a neighbor who had, he was checking his app one day and he noticed, hey, 2 panels are just not working. And so the company came out and double checked those and put them back on. So there's little things like that. That type of thing would definitely be covered under the warranty for sure. So yeah, I would say maintenance costs are very minimal. I'm not going to say they're non-existent. Definitely have that conversation with your installer. And good news, we on our directory also allow you to screen for maintenance, because some people in Alberta have companies, or they had installers who have gone out of business, or they've merged, or something's happened and they're no longer around. And so they're always like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do for maintenance? And so a number of our members are becoming more and more expert on maintenance for systems that are not their own. There are members who will not touch a system that is not their own, but the ones who are willing to are listed on our directory under our maintenance, and you can find them, and they're the ones who aren't too shy to go and help you with a system that's not their own.
Yeah. Actually, I should mention, like, on my current inverter's communications module has gone down. So we're currently waiting on a new update for that from our installer. So the inverter itself is covered under warranty. There are costs associated with like an hourly fee for the installer to come out and fix that. So
right. Okay. That's good to know. Yeah.
Anne is asking whether there are different types of solar panels.
Oh,
Are there pros and cons to each type?
Oh, absolutely. Lots of different types. I'm going to refer you to our distributors, actually, to ask about that. So we actually have on our directory 4 or 5 different companies that serve as distributors. So they basically ship all the panels in from the manufacturers, mostly in Southeast Asia, and then they will sell them here, mostly to our solar installers, but occasionally directly to clients, to micro generators. But they are a good resource to find out what the different products are, because there are more than I can even, I can't really speak to how many there are. And there are also some that are really good for certain circumstances, right? So like we hear a lot about bifacial solar panels, and of course those would be really good if you're in a field and you're wanting to generate electricity from the sun that's hitting them, but also off the snow that's reflecting on the back. So there's like lots of really cool technology out there. A lot of it being manufactured in Southeast Asia, and I definitely recommend talking to our distributors about all the different types of products that are out there, because they're very knowledgeable. Your installer will recommend the type they think is the best. And so you don't have to do all your own research on that. Your installer is really, it is good for them if your solar is good. So they're going to want a nice system size for you with nice modules. They're not going to, I've yet to hear about a solar installer who wants to sell people really crappy old panels. So most of them will be able to help you with figuring out which product types are going to be the best for your circumstances. Some products are better with shade than others, so depending on the shading on your roof, they may recommend a different product. So there's lots of different considerations your solar installer will advise you, but if you really want to nerd out and do all your own research, definitely check in with our distributors, and they'll give you nice product pitches and be able to tell you about all the different products that are out there, which are changing constantly. Yeah, I was, and kind of amazingly, we were just having a little solar potluck here last night, and one person has had solar for about 6 years, and they had the same number of panels as another person who recently got solar, and the person who recently got solar is generating way more electricity with the same number of panels, because the technology has like really improved even over the last 6 to 10 years. And so you can actually have the same size of a system in terms of physical size And you can generate way more electricity now with the technology that's out there. So it's pretty cool what's happening, and it's constantly evolving. Of course, the person who adopted it 6 years ago still doesn't regret that, and nor do I. But it's still a really good investment, but it's just getting better every day.
Right. Okay, we're getting down to the last couple of questions. If you do have a question, pop it in the Q&A right now. Jose is asking about a 25-year warranty. I'm not really sure what that's referring to. I think it's maybe just the solar panels themselves.
Yeah, most solar panels are warranted for 25 years, but there's lots of interesting research showing they can last up to 50 years. So very, very neat to see how long lasting some of these are. I have heard of folks who will swap them out for newer ones, and then the older ones might get used in a reuse market at some point down the road for an off-grid installation, maybe like an irrigation system or something. So there's lots of things that might start happening down the road as we shift into the reuse of older solar panels. But yes, they're warranted very, very long. It's quite a good investment from a warranty perspective.
Great. And Jane is asking about installing solar panels on a sloped concrete roof tiles.
I do not know. I'm sorry, Jane. Sloped concrete is not my expertise, but we do have 80 plus members on our directory. I'm going to ask you to check in with them and ask if they've ever done sloped concrete before. They might have some techniques for mounting that I'm not familiar with. Often, if your roof is not asphalt or standing seam metal, our members can sometimes get creative, but it just might cost a little bit more. And that's what I've found with a lot of alternative roofs is like there might just be extra mounting costs depending on your roof type. So check in with them. They'll know if it's doable or not. And also check in with a few different members, because some will say, hard no, I don't do any roofs that aren't asphalt, and others are like, I'm willing to work with you if you're willing to pay the extra. So definitely some members are willing to work with more difficult roofs than others, but I would check with our members to see if that type of roof is one they're willing to work with.
Okay, and we have Dan sneaking a question in here. Can you comment on solar offset?
Sure. Yeah, we actually have a couple webinars about that. One with Dr. Sarah Hastings-Simons, like my hero. So definitely check our YouTube channel for the one that we have from her. The other one was my other hero, actually, Justin. My husband was on the other one. Should have mentioned him first, but I love Dr. Sarah Hastings-Simons so much. They're both great people, and we had a few other wonderful speakers on both of those panels, but they were a couple of years ago now. The most important thing to know about offsetting your solar is it's fine, it'll generate you some extra money, but you're no longer really producing green electricity when you do that, right? You're selling your green attribute. So if one of the reasons why you are wanting to become a micro generator, if you're wanting to put on solar because you are climate conscious and you're trying to reduce emissions, and then you sell your offsets, you yourself are not reducing emissions. You are enabling another company like Shell Canada or like Enbridge. You're enabling a company to reduce their emissions so that they don't have to reduce their emissions on site. They're reducing them through you. And so you are no longer doing emission reductions if you sell your offsets. So I would say selling offsets is really good if you are low income and you can't afford solar without it, and you are someone who really needs the extra few $100 that you can generate off your offsets. If that's important to you, I am not judging anyone out there who needs that extra few bucks. But if you can afford it, then I would say, and if you care about the environment, then not selling your offsets might be the choice for you. It really depends on your priorities, whether you need the extra cash or whether you want to prioritize emissions reductions. So those are some choices you kind of have to make when you purchase solar. I remember when we were getting our system, the installation company was really shocked when we didn't want to sell our offsets. They were like, what? Everyone's selling their offsets. And I said, I know, but I want the emission reductions. Like I want it to be green. And so, you know, I cared a lot about the environment when I bought them. And we were very fortunate and privileged, and we didn't need that extra $100 or two. So it really just depends on your level of financial need and your interest in personally reducing your emissions. So if you want to be net zero, like that was kind of one of our goals, then don't sell your offsets. You won't be net zero. You can't be, really, because you're allowing another company to reduce their emissions instead through you. So yeah, hopefully that explains it.
All right. Well, that brings an end to Solar 101. Thank you very much, Heather, for presenting today. And of course, thank you very much to Darren Chu and Solar Club for sponsoring today's webinar. Again, we can't do the kind of education events without you, so we really appreciate you. And with that, I will say goodbye. Remember to join us in September for our Intro to EVs in Alberta.
Yeah, have a great summer. See ya.